More trade rumors keep surrounding the Montreal Canadiens as a new article that came out today indicate the Habs could maybe go after a middle six center with the likes of Marco Rossi and Dawson Mercer being linked. We're going to break down those insane rumors. Plus, someone has to go on the Habs D-core, and some articles say it should or could be Xhekaj, while other insiders say no, it definitely won't be. There's a lot to talk about with respect to Habs trade rumors on this episode of Habs Digest. But before we get into that, you guys will be happy to know I fixed the graphic, and it's now accurate. It's 53.8% of you guys, which is still like 4,000 or 5,000 people every single video who are not hitting that subscribe button. And guys, we're only 300 subscribers away from 10,000. If you want to still be part of that first 10,000, help us hit that goal. We'd really appreciate it, so hit it now. But Jesse, let's just dive right into the video. And the first thing we got to talk about are some big changes that are coming. And look, we know the Habs have some changes to make on defense, and we want to highlight first some stuff that was said by Eric Engels in a mailbag. We're going to start with this. He kind of said, like, outside of Guhle, who else is going to jump up from that bottom pairing role into a top four role? And he says, as Jordan Harris returns, waiving or trading Gustav Lindstrom feels like the first step. And trading Gustav Lindstrom's not really something we've really dove into. Could be a possibility. But he also says a lot of teams might want to take on David Savard. As you see at the bottom, they might be really inclined to pay a high price to acquire him, knowing he's not just a pure rental. Just talking on the subject of Lindstrom and Savard and the issue with the Habs defense now being too deep, I feel like this is something that, like, Lindstrom especially, something we haven't really discussed, but yeah, like, we need to make room for, because there's a lot of guys who could easily jump into that top four role, like maybe tomorrow if given the opportunity.
And the question is just what to do, right? Because you don't want to just have, a defense core full of just rookies, but at the same time, it's like you need to make room for these young guys that are already knocking at the door. Not to speak of Lane Hudson, David Reinbacher, Logan Mailloux, the list is goes on and on. And you have to feel if some of these other prospects kind of turn into players like Jaden Struble, it just gets even more crowded. So really, it's the question of what direction to go. And I definitely understand the approach of, obviously doing something with Lindstrom, but then from there, what do we want to do? Because it's like, has enough time passed in your mind, Josh, like to let the young guys kind of ride, or do you still want to hold on to some of these vets?
I mean, it's tough, right? Because obviously the vets, when you watch them, they have a presence about them, right? They are more steady. They have more leadership in the locker room, at least typically. We don't really know what goes on behind those doors, but it sure seems like it's that way. And like David Savard, just showing like examples of being super physical, but laying his body on the line every night. I think it's very conducive to winning. And while I do like the young guys, like we were saying before the show, Jesse, not every player on the team can be young. Like this ideal world of everyone being 20 to 25 right now and them all still being here when the Habs are contending is not a reality. I mean, what are your thoughts on the situation before we maybe talk about one guy that might be sticking around? Are you cool to let the young guys ride, or do you maybe want to still hold on to some vets?
I think you want to give the young guys as much time as possible. You don't want to be hasty and kind of dole out these guys. So I see that's why I'm kind of mentioning, Jonathan Kovacevic a little bit more, because it's nice not just to have vets, but also vets in key positions where these young guys can learn from, right? Because they really need that. And that's when these vets can really be the most valuable, is when they're really helping to shape, that next wave. So it's like, I can see Kovacevic, while being a vet, Savard is somebody really important for this team. And while that kind of opens up a spot, while still giving a little bit time, because you don't want to be too hasty. Like, of course, Jordan Harris, he's looking like the odd man out, but it's like, you don't want to be too quick to trade this guy and then go see him just flourish with some other team, especially in our own division, in our own conference. Like, how hurtful would that be, right? Seeing for the next 10 years, putting up some solid numbers every night, So anyway, I think it's really important to be patient. Of course, our young decor, they're taking really big strides. It really helps a lot that, okay, we can start giving them a little bit more responsibility. But I feel besides Matheson, you still want to have a little bit of that vet presence there as well.
Yeah, you're very right. And it's like, it's so hard when you have so many guys that look like they could make the squad, right? How do you make room? Who do you give up? You don't want to give up on someone too early, or you don't want to hold on to someone too long until they show they have no value. It's really tough. But the one guy that maybe has the most, discussion about his value and where his plans are long term for Montreal at this point is Arber Xhekaj. And as Eric Engels says in the mailbag, they haven't put a limit of games for Xhekaj in the AHL. They said, and even if I couldn't say for sure which of the team's young defensemen might eventually be moved, I have a strong inclination Xhekaj will remain with the Canadiens when all is said and done. So that's very interesting to hear that Engels is like, I really think Xhekaj's going to stay, and it's really heavily implying I think Xhekaj will be back in the NHL very soon. And talking about his stint in the AHL, I mean, he's been doing great things. Of course, the JF was talking about him. He said, in general, just clean up the D zone. And Xhekaj said he doesn't think management wants him to be a 6 or 7 guy in Montreal. He thinks management wants him to be a go-to guy who plays 20 minutes a night and build into that. I mean, hey, maybe that's not my expectation, but if that's the goal he's setting for himself, hey, power to him. That is amazing. And JF said turnovers are the big issue for him, and he's been playing with Mailloux recently where turnovers have really been a big issue for them. No real surprise there. That's been a weakness of both of these guys for since we've kind of known them, right? But they've been playing great together, cool and collected. Definitely some problems, but they're stabilizing now. Where does Xhekaj fit? I mean, we're going to get into something a little later that proposes that he could be one of the guys on the move, but it sure seems like he's not, at least coming from Eric Engels. We've talked about this before, and let us know in the comments down below. But in your mind, Jesse, today, first of all, is Xhekaj part of this team's bottom 4, like second pair or third pairing defenseman long term? And is he going to be a 20-minute per night guy?
He is part of our core long term. I don't know if he's going to be a 20-minute a night guy, but of course it's better to kind of aim a little bit higher and not get it. But absolutely, this team, absolutely. So it really kind of leaves the question, who is that odd man out though? Which oddly enough relates back again to our goalie situation, right? Which I believe Kent Hughes would be very savvy to approach it in this way of kind of, he knows he's not going to get a huge approach, a huge pay for Jake Allen. Of course, he's gotten calls already on them. It just hasn't been enough, right? So what I feel that really, Kent Hughes wants to do is package Jake Allen, package one of our extra defensemen. We got tons of prospects. We got tons of picks. Put this together and really get a solid offensive player. And this might be coming sooner than later just by the fact that we need to make a move when it comes to our goaltending, but not just with our goaltending, with our defense as well. Trades are coming, so it really makes sense to me to package this together. And I feel like this is Kent Hughes' plan to get the best possible return for Jake Allen and company.
Yeah, I mean, a move is coming, and there's no doubt about that. Like, there's something coming, and hopefully it's sooner than we think. I mean, the trade deadline's not that far away. Like we said, the roster freeze is going to be over soon. But what a great transition into kind of our final topic, and it hits the nail right on the head, Jesse. And, well, look, I have Rossi and Mercer here because that's what they say in the article. Do I think those are realistic targets? Maybe not necessarily. Would I love both of them on the Habs? Oh, absolutely. You guys know I'm also a Minnesota Wild fan. Huge fan of Rossi. He's not getting traded from Minnesota. And as a Newfoundlander, being here right now, the nice license plate over there, I love Dawson Mercer as well. But anyway, we're going to get into this. So, like you said, Jesse, packaging some players at this point is probably the best idea for Montreal. And a Winning Habit proposed this. They said a trade package, well, any potential trade of this this is sort of discussing the Habs getting another top 6 center of the future. They say you're going to need one of Harris or Xhekaj as a starting point. And if they can offload a goaltender while helping a cap-strapped team with a low-cost option could get the ball rolling, such as Harris, Allen, maybe a prospect such as Sean Farrell, and a pick could entice a manager to listen, and a pick will have to be at minimum a second, and if the Habs retain some Allen salary, that could help too. They go on to say, some trade targets include Cole Sillinger, Marco Rossi, and Dawson Mercer. Now, Jesse, these are 3 really, really good players. Rossi, of course, coming into his own this year, being one of the top, he's on the top line in Minnesota now after struggling, having some cardiac issues from COVID. He's been amazing. Dawson Mercer, very, very solid for New Jersey. Cole Sillinger, while still a bit raw, is still only 22 years old. But I look at those guys, and I look at a package of Jake Allen, Sean Farrell, like a second-round pick, and Jordan Harris, and I wonder, is that enough to get a deal like this done for a player that's quite good? Or if you were in the position to make a trade like this, would you go for another young guy to pair alongside everyone, or would you go for maybe a more established star, a guy where we kind of know what they are already? Because that's also kind of a tough internal decision when you're trying to transition out of a rebuild.
It's a solid point. When you're giving up that much sometimes, depending on what that pick is, of course, because that varies greatly in the value of that trade, you want to make sure that you're kind of getting that value, right? So sometimes going for that established player, and again, speaking to that theme of having that balance of, we want to be a young team, but it's so important for your team not just to be those young guys. That experience is so important to having a winning team and a winning culture and everything else. That being said, these are some phenomenal young players that we've listed. Dawson Mercer, 22 years old, only a couple of years removed from a 27 goal season. You got to feel like he's got even more than that in the bag still. Marco Rossi's the type of play that he has would just be phenomenal with New Hook. You can see Dach kind of being set up, man. The question is, do you want kind of another smaller type of centerman? Now, when you have big boys like Dach and now Juraj Slafkovsky cementing yourself into the top 6, that makes it easier to bring in a smaller player, but it's still a fair argument to weigh the cons of that as well. But at the same time, phenomenal players. Of course, you want to make sure though, like this move is going to be so important to get right. And it's interesting to think that we're actually talking about this already, but it might actually be wise sometimes to make this move sooner than later. You don't want to wait till a lot of the value on your prospects kind of goes by, and we know what we need, and that's offensive talent. So you feel like it's maybe better to address this sooner rather than later, given the circumstances in Montreal right now.
Yeah, like I look at this proposed trade and I say to myself, like, this is the exact type of deal Montreal needs. You have a boatload of prospects you can move. You have a bunch of draft picks you can move. You have a desirable goaltender in Jake Allen that many solid teams would like to move. And like out of those teams, New Jersey still has a big goaltending issue, right? So maybe it wouldn't be impossible to get Mercer, though I think a lot of New Jersey fans would probably immediately say that's not enough. And I think that's the thing. Like for these 3 players, every fan base is saying, like, to that proposed trade, they're saying that's not enough to get my guy. And that's fair too. But again, I like we said, I like the idea. The Habs have so many prospects to play with. They have so many guys, and not all of them are going to end up being top players. But when you dangle them in front of teams, someone might end up biting. And whether it's, Dawson Mercer to create the Newfoundland connection, or like with him and New Hook or whatever. But also another center, do we even necessarily need that? Like in the future, is it going to be Kirby, Dach, and Caufield together with Slafkovsky and Suzuki staying on the top line? Maybe we just need some wing star power, right? There's so many internal questions, but it's something that we like to raise at this point because a trade has to come soon, whether it's for a defenseman or a forward or something else. But it's just exciting to speculate, and it's really exciting to hear other fans and other media members are saying, yeah, like something's got to give. So we'll keep you updated on all that. But for now, that'll do it for this episode of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel, be part of the first 10,000. You'll be glad you're part of the first 10,000, right? And we'd be really happy to. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.